And now, ladies and gentlemen,
Put your thumbs up and say it's Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo, Tickety Boo, everything's Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo, son. Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo!
Welcome to another episode of Tickety Boo. Today we are talking about gaslighting, the mind game that messes with everything. Gaslighting isn't just someone lying to you, it's slower than that, it's subtle, it chips away at your reality until you start questioning yourself, your memory and your instincts, and certainly your feelings. And the worst part, it doesn't always come wrapped up in anger. Sometimes it shows up disguised as love, logic, or even somebody caring for you. So in this episode, we're naming it, we're calling it out, and we're giving you your reality back. So Ian and Iona, I think we've all brushed up against it in some kind of way before. The patterns, the psychology of it. Have either of you ever found yourself second guessing everything because of someone else's version of events?
I'll start it. Yes, definitely. I didn't understand it at the time, but there are certainly relationships where somebody has managed to sort of take some control over my own thought process, or certainly interrupt it in any way. So it's not something that you see coming. It's the absolute masterpiece of the manipulator. So what they do is it starts very, very subtly, and it could be on a first date, not too sure about what you're wearing. I normally like men with better teeth, that kind of thing. But what it can be, like with the clothes, for example, that's somebody early on starting to establish some kind of control without directly saying it, but just planting the seed. And then over time, if somebody came out directly and said it in one hit, you'd see it coming and you'd say, no, you're not talking to me like this. But what happens is over a period of time, people plant the seed, and the best people that are doing this are the ones that look to the outside world as if they're the kindest, most charismatic people in the world. Covert, absolutely. Yeah. So that makes you start to question yourself, because everybody else thinks this person's great. So maybe it's me that's wrong. But this constant sort of erosion, what it is, sorry for the waffling, it's about, ultimately, gaslighting is where somebody wants you to question your own inner voice and listen to them. Yeah, so it's a form of control.
I get what you're saying, like the throwaway statement. I know you made it about dating and stuff, like they make a comment about something, and as you're up inside your head going, did they just really say that? They're on to the conversation moves on, but then you're going, maybe actually they've got a point. Why is it they've said that? And you're in internal dialogue, but the conversation and social environment has moved on to something else. What about you, Iona? Have you come up against it?
Yeah, more subtly. So I haven't experienced a lot of it, but when I look back and reflect, it's been in those times, now in hindsight I can see, where you kind of it's that self-doubt, whether it's personally in romance or if it's in business, you kind of doubt, did I do that or did I say that? Where someone reflects back to you, oh yeah, well, this is what we're doing, this is what we discussed, well, that in a business context. But it can also happen in a conversation you've had with a friend or a partner, and they expect something of you, or they summarize something back to you in a way you're like, wait, I wouldn't have said that, and they convince you would have. But it's been so subtle for me that it's been like, I've learned that anytime that happens, if I'm starting to doubt myself, then that's my cue, and that's what I ask other people to do is, okay, if I'm questioning myself, then is this true or not? So it's about learning to trust yourself. And I'm not talking about someone who's been in a relationship that's been like, they've been seriously gaslit. It's not as easy to evaluate in this way, but it starts with small steps. Starting to get comfortable with what is true for you. So that's the warnings. That's the red light warning thing for me, is when you start doubting yourself.
Yeah, I've had it in sort of personal and in business. One of the biggest ones I can remember in business was we did an event for a particular client and they didn't turn up to the event, which is fine, but we delivered the event. But then they decided not to pay us. And after weeks and months of chasing the money, we brought it up calmly to them, and they were like, "You've been oversensitive. You're just putting too much pressure on here. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. You're now making me feel like that I've done something wrong." And you're like, "But you owe us money, and you've not told us any valid reason as to why." And the phone got put down a couple of times on me. And in the end, I got an email saying, "Don't phone me again. You make me feel bad." So we ended up having to pass it on to a debt collection agency who then collected the money for us. I mean, that's an extreme example of it. But you do end up sitting there going, did I just imagine that happening? What the hell's going on there? But sometimes gaslighting isn't about rage and shouting. It's these sort of subtle, little things that really do sort of get your brain scrambling for like, what the hell?
Well, that's it. So, yeah. So obviously, just to clarify, gaslighting, it is the process of making you doubt yourself.
Yeah.
And your own thoughts by altering your environment, altering what, well, just the things and what I said, not being consistent. But going back to the workplace, a few good examples of that is a manager in a workplace. If something doesn't go right, I never told you to do that. So then you're scratching your head, oh, you definitely did. Or that's not the way I said to do it. That's just using the workplace.
Yeah,
that's just some sort of fairly small examples, but it builds up, and over time, it can bring on overwhelming the workplace, depression, anxiety, confusion. All because somebody doesn't want to be accountable for their own actions. So it's a means of pushing the outcome that they've sort of instructed or bought and making you responsible for their failures.
Yeah.
So they're never in the chair.
I think the phrase gaslighting seems to have really come to, pardon the pun, light in what seems like not that long ago, although it has been around for a long time. The term, I don't know if you know this, actually comes from the film called Gaslight. And it's where the husband starts to mess with the wife's reality, and he's literally dimming the lights and telling her that she's just imagining it and really starting to mess with her head. So that's where the phrase gaslighting actually comes from it. And the root of it, it's not actually lying. It's about making someone question what they know is real. But the interesting things to me, why do we think people do it? Do we think they do it on purpose? Or do you think it could be people covering up fear or shame or feelings are not good enough? Or do you think it could be a bit of both of that?
I think it's all of the above, or a combination of. There will be somebody who's doing this on purpose to be cruel and malicious and wants to control. But I think for other people, it will be, again, their own fear, their own shame about not wanting to get caught out or wanting to back out of something now. I think it's more, I think there's many nuances, but I don't think it's never done out of compassion, is it? You don't gaslight to be nice. So there's a lot of manipulation in there, no matter which way, whether they're trying to deceive themselves or you.
I maintain that I think it's a masterpiece of the manipulator, but I don't think it's always done with the worst intent.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just throwaway comments from a family member, like it's things that are to stop you acknowledging your own feelings. So don't be daft. It's not that important. There's no need to feel that way. You're being daft. Whatever it is like that, it's kind of a way of stopping you acknowledging your own inner voice and how you feel.
Well, it's those throwaway statements that almost lean into toxic positivity, isn't it? Where you sort of doubt yourself. Have you ever had someone do this to you where instead of owning what they did, they actually just start to over-explain it to death? Like leading you away in this big story. It's almost like they give you a TED talk on communication rather than just actually owning up to what they've done. I've had that happen to me.
Yeah, lots of times.
Yeah.
Over intellectualizing your feelings and what's going on, and it's kind of that whole thing with baffle you with science. They try and make your feelings irrelevant by overriding them with logic. I think that's a pretty solid way of sort of breaking somebody down.
Yeah. And the more they over communicated, the more you find yourself going, I'm now really lost in this.
Yeah, exactly.
What is this really about? What do you think?
Yeah, I was just thinking with some of those examples you're giving, I'm like wondering how many times accidentally as parents, when a child is trying to express an emotion, a parent's like, no, that's not how you should feel, or no, that's not right, or no, you're okay. So I think it can actually be done. So I'm contradicting what I already said, which is awesome. That's a part of the reason for this open discussion. It can be actually they don't know they're doing it. They're trying to override a child's who's learning to express, and because sometimes children don't always have the language to say how they're feeling. So I think there are more subtle aspects of it, but then there can be parents who very much are gaslighting their children.
That's a good question. So you've got a young person who's not sort of emotionally mature yet, still trying to figure it all out, and your parents are constantly telling you that you're overreacting. I mean, and that is, we do it, but is that a good thing? Are we telling them that the reactions are disproportionate to what's happening, or are we, dispelling how they feel?
I know I would have definitely have been guilty of doing that myself. You're overreacting, but that was probably either not wanting to or not having the time and space to actually stop, communicate clearly and work out what's actually going on in that situation. So that throwaway statement actually probably creates more harm than it does good.
There's actually a really, just for our listeners, I would love to share this with them. There's a really great psychological tool. It's a wheel, like it's not like it's a circle on a piece of paper, but it's got like all the emotions and what they are. So you can start to learn with your children, with your teenagers, or with your partner even, like how to communicate. How are you feeling? Because not everybody has the language, especially if they didn't learn it, or we're told not to be angry, to stifle that down. So to learn to express ourselves, and it's a safe way to do it. And you can have it just be, really, how was your day? So, instead of just like a smiley face, an sad face, it's the psychological wheel of emotions. I can't remember the exact terminology, but yeah, if anybody puts that into any search engine, you'll find it.
The reality, in my opinion, why we probably do that with our children is it's very probably what our parents did with us in those situations.
Yeah, and it's being able to articulate it, and a lot of the time we don't understand our feelings. We don't understand our own feelings, let alone what somebody else is, going through, especially if it's not logical.
Well, we've talked about this in the episode we both did with Phil Upton, where we talked about we didn't have the language to express emotions when we were growing up.
Yeah.
So we would just either have a meltdown with them or completely overreact with them because we didn't actually have a way of contextualising them, do we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to talk about our ability to self-gaslight.
Yes.
With our own inner critic, which we've all got.
Mm-hmm.
You may have led a life where you're fortunate enough not to have somebody gaslight you, but I think everybody listening to this episode will have an inner critic and would have self-gaslighted, but maybe not recognised it at the time. Can you?
Oh, it happens all the time. It just depends on how healthy our own narrative of what's going on in our head is. For example, going back to work, or if you're waiting for feedback on something that you've done, but that feedback doesn't come. So what you constantly, or another example, you're waiting for the results of an interview and the results don't come soon enough. In your head, I didn't do well. I got it wrong.
Yeah.
I wasn't complete. And you've got all these different reasons why you failed to meet your expectation.
Yeah.
Because you're gaslighting yourself, and then all of a sudden you get a call and go, oh, that's fine, you got the job, or that was okay. And though it can, again, like with the feedback, that can be another way of an employer or manager manipulating you. But normally it's us gaslighting ourselves. And whether it's impatience or what, but we actually talk ourselves into saying that it was because we haven't heard, we failed.
Yeah. It's these moments where you sit there. I've done this so much in my life going, maybe I am actually the problem here. And I'm not saying you're not part of the problem, but in that moment you truly believe you are the complete problem. Where actually it involves, if it's between two people, both parties looking at themselves, but you end up carrying more away from the conversation about yourself than that person does, and they just seem to be carrying on living their best life as though they're amazing.
Yeah, well, again, it's shifting the blame. So when you're having a conversation with, whether it's a bad relationship or a manager, whatever it is, when you've got a two-way conversation going, but you're both looking for different things from that conversation, you need to ask yourself some questions. Where I'm coming from with that is, if you're trying to explain yourself and get them to hear your point of view and find a resolution, but they don't want to know and they're not listening, what are they involved in that conversation for? That's you playing into the cards, and then all of a sudden you start to apologise for things you haven't done.
So we fundamentally, we start to bully ourselves, don't we? And that's very probably because somebody else taught you to doubt yourself.
Yeah, it can be.
You ever stop to think about that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like, oh, I'll never accomplish that. I never do that. I never finish anything. Who am I to think I can? So that can be the emotional downward spiral. And I think a simple way to start to change that and the direction of that, as soon as we catch ourselves doing it, is to start to look at what we have achieved, what we have done. Look at the highlights. Like if it's the job interview, okay, well, what did you say that went well? Because we can all pick things apart afterwards and go, oh, I should have said this, I should have said that. Well, what did you say well? And how can we learn from that? So you can build resilience, and you can kind of have a growth mindset instead of just being fixed and everything's wrong about me. We can start to learn from the situations and how we react in them and how we process them.
Another one that springs to mind is choices. One of the great things that you can weaponise is choices. Give somebody choices where they just can't win. No matter what they do, you're not going to come out on top with certain people. So it will always be a case of, oh, that wasn't right. You could have done that better. That's wrong. And absolutely, no matter what way you go, you can't win. And then what happens is you start to doubt your own choices. You start to doubt your own mind. And then what happens is you start to lean into them to make their choices. And this is how you build isolation. This is how you really chip away at somebody's confidence. And that's one, there's lots of different things that you can weaponise when we're talking about gaslighting. Choices is one.
Yeah, I think I can definitely relate to that in sort of friendship groups where you find yourself stuck, that if you stay within that friendship group, you end up feeling rotten and not good. But if you pull yourself away from that friendship group because of their behaviours, you end up feeling rotten.
That's it.
Not good.
Damned if you do, damned if you
Damned
don't.
if you don't. So if you stay in the situation, you're like, you're not good enough, you're not strong enough, you can't, you can't break away from this. And then when you do break away and they start, the jungle drums start beating and you become the conversation target, you go, maybe I am those things. Maybe actually they are right and I've been wrong all along. And they use that to control the narrative.
But what a great way of getting, especially as a young, impressionable person, what a great way of getting you to do things that they want you to do. They get you to doubt your choices, doubt your own mind, and then you start thinking about things from their point of view and totally dispelling your own inner voice, which is ultimately what gaslighters are looking to do. It's a form of control. It's a form of coercive control.
So what helps us in these situations then when we feel like, or we're not sure if we're being gaslit?
Right. Recognising sincerity. Recognise insincere apologies. Weaponise kindness. By that I mean false or insincere gestures. Weaponised empathy. From that, it could be, I thought that you were better than that. Using your own action, trying to use your core beliefs and make it look as if you're going against them. I thought you were better than that. I thought you knew better, etc. So I'd definitely say sincerity is one. The other thing is just staying true to what you believe and not constantly rolling over to to force yourself into this other person's mold.
I think in those situations you got.
Yeah, I was just
Yeah.
going to say, it's a felt sense, because sometimes we may not know or how to question it. So what I would say is start to just recognize the feeling in yourself. Does that feel right, or that feels off? And just so that you start to teach yourself and trust yourself. And then also go, this feels good. So you can clarity through contrast. So if you're not sure in an experience, an environment, whether it's a friend group or within work, start to recognize, that feels off. Like in my gut, this doesn't feel right. And acknowledge that and reward yourself for that. Say, okay, this doesn't feel right. And then start to go, oh, yes. Feel into things that felt right. Oh, yes, this feels good. This brings me peace. I feel content. And so you get to see the difference between maybe the way somebody speaks to you within these environments, within these circles.
Yeah. We've talked about gut instinct before, haven't we, in these episodes? But in that moment when you feel self-doubt and your gut is pinging, that I think is your body knowing before your brain that something's not right in the situation, even though you can't explain it.
It's another one of those subconscious cues.
Yeah.
Where
And how often have you walked away from something and then, or done something, participated in it, and then go, oh, I knew it. Like deep down, oh, I knew I should have or shouldn't have done that, or I should have, like again and again. So it's learning to know that we actually do have that insight and we have that like inner compass.
we do. For me, one of the things that sets my gut feeling off is flip-flopping. People that go from one emotion to another. In the flip, you've not done, you think, what have I done? What have I done?
Yeah.
And we've often spoke about how I can take the stress of, owing somebody £1 million on a job or waiting for planning permission, but then somebody doesn't put a kiss on the end of a text message, and all of a sudden, what have I done? What have I done? And again, it might not be intentional, and this may be us gaslighting ourselves, but this constant flipping and flopping between different mood states.
Inconsistent in their approach.
It means you can't keep up, so you start to doubt, and then my gut instantly goes, because I don't know where I am with that person.
So it's like the people that you deal with are Jekyll and Hyde. You're never quite sure which version or which approach from that person you're going to get.
Exactly.
Yeah, that does keep you on your toes and keeps you sort of second guessing. And I think the trap that a lot of people think is, I need to win this and figure it out so I can get the control back. But generally in these situations, you can't win. There is no win. Mm-hmm. You actually just lead to more frustration and confusion. And I think, you need to shift the power back to you by just stepping back from the situation and not being involved in it.
But we were talking about this just before we went on air. And me stepping back from some situations and then doing some reading up and just generally just looking back with a different set of eyes, and literally, as we mentioned the word gaslighting, it's like ting, ting, ting. The number of instances that I've seen within certain people that was so obvious, but at the time, because I just couldn't see it, because mentally I was in that place where I'd been eroded away and I was doubting myself, and you start, because outwardly they seem to be kind, or they use words like everybody else agrees with me. So that instantly makes you feel, well, if everybody else is thinking that.
And what would their reaction would have been if you'd raised that issue?
Well, it would be not all. It would be more, they'd step up the gaslighting and push it back on you.
Yeah.
They'd, they'd analyse it.
So that person would just work really hard to avoid their truth.
Yes. I think one of the things about gaslighters is that it's an avoidance of accountability for themselves. It's not just about control. It's about twisting the narrative so it wasn't their fault. It's about hiding themselves, hiding their true intent.
Yeah.
As well as control and manipulation.
I think if you've got anybody in your domain who makes you believe that you can't trust your own mind, that tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
Yes.
That you don't need any
That's
more.
a red flag in and of itself.
If that's not enough to go, I'm off. Mm-hmm. What is going to be enough?
Yep.
But normally we have to learn this the hard way. Do you think sometimes, have you ever ended up in a situation in your life through struggles, strains or stresses where you've unintentionally ended up gaslighting other people? Not through manipulation, through to cover up your anxieties, your insecurities.
I think we all have. I think.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of an example, but
I know
Definitely.
I have. I know there was a point in life where I was really struggling, and it started to, on my other business, the events business, the quality started to drop off. It was good enough, but it wasn't to the standard that things were normally done to, because my mind was struggling. So somebody like a client, because we always strive to do things really, really well. We'd under promise, over deliver. When that bar started to drop, it got picked up on quite quickly. So they'd say, it wasn't from a position of badness. It was like, we've noticed that this isn't like it normally is. And I go, yeah, but you didn't notice that we did this over here, did you? Immediately try and pull them away from it. And then I would go into that, now you're going to get a TED talk on how well we did all of this over here. But what I was really trying to do was go, I'm actually really anxious and I'm struggling at the moment and my eye's not on the ball. That's what I was unable to say. And that's why I think it's really important that sometimes people will manipulate or gaslight, but it's not from a place of badness.
Yeah. But that was about you trying to avoid accountability.
Yeah, insecurity. Yeah. So I think we've all probably, I mean, I don't know, Iona, you might not agree with me, but...
Yeah, I'm sure we all do or have at some point. I can't think, because this is all about truth, and truth for me is like my top value and honesty, and it has been most of my life. And so I'm really struggling to think, I certainly wouldn't have intentionally done it. I think I've almost been brutally truthful and brutally with myself. So if anything, I would have probably made it my fault in those situations. But I
remember a certain phone call with you after you'd been through some stuff and you were rabbiting on it in your lovely little way that you do. And then I actually went, so you're not all right then? And then you tried to you gaslighted yourself for a few moments.
Okay, well, there we go. Yeah, that is true. But also, and I was able to receive that because, I know that's true. When someone's going, it was after like a bunch of deaths and whole things have happened. Am I okay? You're like, I'm getting by. You're like, just doing the things. It was trying to survive to keep my head above water. But I was also really aware, because when you said that, I didn't go, oh, no. Like, I did accept that.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, yeah, that'll be true.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's like, it's really easy, or it can be challenging, but I'm really quick to come back, yes, that is true. I can see that, so I'm not trying to blanket it. But yeah, you're right. So for a split second there.
Yeah, we've all done it. It's really easy to do it, isn't it?
I think, going back to the question, accidentally... or intentionally gaslighting other people. I've done it more so when I was younger, and it was because I was trying to push my beliefs of what I thought I had the facts right. So I'd try and get somebody else to believe my point of view, and a week later, having forced my point of view on somebody, I've realised that I got it all wrong in the first place. So you've got them. So it didn't come from a place of badness. It came from a place of probably ego. I wouldn't dream of doing that now. Now I'm with an older head, I'm just like, well, you believe what you believe. I mean, ultimately, I'm not after validation, I'm after the truth. So I'm quite content when I found that. If you're saying it's that way, before I do that again, I'll go and check my facts and make sure I'm right. But definitely a form of my personal, accidentally gaslighting people was trying to push my opinion on other people that wasn't necessarily correct. And it is only my opinion, because we're all entitled to our own.
It's not a fact.
So, yeah.
It's just an opinion. I do think it's important that we get balance in this conversation around gaslighting, because I think the phrase has a negative connotation to it, which it certainly can be. It can be manipulation and toxic, but other times it can come from a place of struggle.
Yeah.
And somebody maybe coming from maybe an upbringing where they were constantly gaslit, so they just think that's what you do. that doesn't mean that that person's always a bad person. There can be struggle underneath the surface as well. Because I don't want to sort of, you know, browbeat all of these are bad people, because some of them are, but not all of them are.
Yeah, and I think it's great we have discussed that across the board. That's been really, really interesting and has brought it to like my attention as well. So I think it's been a really great conversation.
Yeah, better understanding of the whole situation. So yeah, go on in.
I was going to say, so what do we do to avoid gaslight? Or if we recognise we're being gaslit? Now, me, I would try and find out what my values are and my beliefs are, try and go back to them, stay true to it. But one thing that's most important of all is when you start to doubt yourself, journal, take notes, because if you write it down, you then have something physically to back up what you've said. And if you can visually see it, you can understand it better. And the other thing is, don't look at individual behaviours of people. Stand back and look at patterns, because individual behaviours are very, very easy to dismiss or, you know, just brush under the carpet. But if you stand back and over a period of time look at patterns, patterns don't lie. So that's what I would say.
I think in the danger of oversimplifying this, because I know it's not always this easy, to me now, I wouldn't even challenge it. I would just, if I can, remove myself, take a step back, not be in it.
If you're in a workplace or you're in a relationship where you're tied, and half the time you don't realise you're being gaslit. Until you stand outside and look back in, you don't realise that you've
The thing is, a lot of the time, these people can be friends and family members, but you still have the choice to step back and to evaluate. So I think one of the best things you can do is improve your self-awareness.
Yeah. And your self-worth, and know what's true for you.
Yeah. Yeah. In the last episode, we talked about fear and discomfort.
Yeah.
Step into that so you can enforce boundaries, but don't get into justification, explanation, getting them to see your point of view, because you'll just drive yourself crazy.
And it can't, like if it's a family situation, let's say you're sitting down to a big dinner and everybody's there, and it could be that one relative who always triggers you, who's always trying to tell you how it is. Let them. You don't need to interact. You don't need to take it on. Again, you know, self-worth, awareness about what's going on, knowing what's true to you, like check in with yourself, and just let them.
And here's the thing, right? This is the really interesting thing I've seen over the period of time. When you step back, the perpetrator will be massively triggered by that. They do not like that. When you take your power back and you step back, watch their reaction. And if they're triggered, it's because they're not wanting to look at their own stuff.
Yes.
And it's not falling into that trap of they've been triggered, so therefore I must be the problem, or I've done something wrong.
And also, if you're not interacting with it and you're just letting them, like it'll sort of fizzle out because you're not challenging them. You're not standing up. No, that's not true. That's like, no, this isn't. So it can, either they're going to need to face their own stuff, or they'll just diffuse because there's no fuel to the fire, and then it'll just dissipate and you move on to the next conversation. Yeah.
Well, in our last episode, just to wrap up, we talked about definition of success and how we see it now. My definition of success now is where I don't have to deal with arseholes.
100%.
And if I'm dealing with people that are constantly gaslighting me, I'm not a success. I am not curating my surrounding. I am not cutting that out of my life, because I felt at one point in life where I feared rejection and craved acceptance, I would tolerate that.
Yeah.
But now I'm at a point in my life going, nah.
Well, that's an example of you gaslighting yourself, where you want to stay within a group or with a person because you want to be part of the pack.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't want to leave on bad terms because you think it's going to make you look bad. You feel you've got to be part of the pack. You can't survive without them. This is all you gaslighting yourself and playing back into it.
So my definition, if we could rewind and go and edit that last episode, my definition of success is not having any gaslighters around me or not being gaslit.
Agreed.
Because I get peace.
Yeah.
Right. We nearly wrapped, and then we went into another good bit, but now we are wrapping. So thanks very much for joining us on this episode of Tickety Boo, and we look forward to catching up with you in the next episode.
If you or someone close to you needs to access mental health support, please contact your GP Or, if it's out with normal office hours, get in touch with NHS 24 on 111. Alternatively, contact the Samaritans on 116 123. All calls are free of charge from any phone. You can also find more support information on the Tickety Boo website, ticketyboopodcast.co.uk.